Hi, everybody. Welcome to Community Conversations. We are in the second to last week of our spring series on a sense of place. Next week, we're going to have our grand finale of the quarter, and that is with Michael Strayer and Ann Williamson, talking about making your way in the world today takes everything you've got. And if you know where that comes from, you're probably my age or older. So today, I want to welcome Lucas Myers. Lucas Myers has been teaching biology at Lower Columbia College for 12 years. And in addition, he has served as the head coach of the very successful LCC women's basketball team, woo! And was named a 2021 Educator of the Year by Instructure Learning Management Systems. He is a leader in the state of Washington in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math education efforts. Please welcome Lucas Myers.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you for that intro, Courtney. I teach human anatomy and physiology here. So we're going to talk today a little bit about sense of place in regards to being home and what home means to us, and then what does that have to do with our physiology? What does that have to do with us as people, or our brains, our anatomy, and then a little bit how that impacts us when we do other things like go on vacation and can't use the restroom as well as we'd like to, or can't sleep. So we're gonna talk a little bit about why that is, because all of us have probably experienced something similar at some point in our travels. We're lucky today. Courtney mentioned basketball, so I'll give us a chance to. We have 3 women's basketball players over here that are NWAC champions this year. So first ever group to win an NWAC title in women's basketball at LCC. So pretty big deal for them. But thank you all for being here. The first thing we're going to talk about, though, is what makes a home important to us. And I don't have a lot of slides today. Okay, I only have a couple. So I'm going to do some drawings for you as well, maybe as we talk about some of the physiology. But what makes something home, and why is that important to us? Okay, and it can be a lot of different things for people. Okay, but one of the key things, if you look at research around the psychology and homes, or a place where you belong, doesn't have to be physically a house, is what we call place attachment. Okay, people get attached to something. Okay, and we've all experienced this, where we are attached to a house, a community of people. Could be a religious organization, a church. Okay, there's all these different places we get attached to it. And the way we get attached is it becomes part of who we are. Okay, psychologically, we become part of that place. And that impacts us physiologically, and then impacts us as we leave those places, or we decide to move on from those places, which we'll talk about. Okay, so there's 2 parts of that. There's place dependence and place identity. Okay, so what I just mentioned was place identity. We identify with these places. Okay, for me as a teacher at LCC, I've been here 12 years, going on 13 years. I identify with this place. I wouldn't be who I am without LCC in my mind, because I've spent most of my last 13 years on this campus in these buildings, as Courtney knows how that goes. So we identify with those places. And if I go anywhere, a lot of times I introduce myself as a teacher at LCC or a coach at LCC. It becomes part of who we are. We become very attached to that portion of who we are based on where we live, what we're a part of, what we do, right? And that can be really positive, and that can be negative at the same time, right? There's good and bad to that, okay? And then we can also become really dependent on that place for comfort, for all sorts of different needs, okay? For satisfaction, we can depend on these places that we're attached to, okay? And that again can be good and bad, okay? It can be a reason we're really successful, which we'll talk about, but it can also be a reason we stay in a place that we shouldn't, okay? So some positive benefits, though, to place attachment, okay? Research has found that when someone has a place they feel attached to, a home, a community, right? When we talk a lot about, I know as a coach, I talk a lot about this, and teachers, and you have families. It's not always blood family. You have a family, sometimes a group of people that you're around, you're connected to. and you belong to, right? So that you can be very attached to that. Okay. It's not just a house, right? It could be a basketball team, could be a group of people you work with. All right. You get attached to those things. You belong to those. What they found is when people have those attachments, people have better physical and mental health. Okay. They have more satisfying social relationships. So the relationships are better when they have these attachments, less stress, and just overall greater satisfaction with their life and where they are. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that they feel comfortable, they feel connected, they have a good self-worth and well-being because of that connection. Okay. And it improves their health, it improves their daily life. There's just tons of positive benefits from that. Okay. And we could go into all those. All right. But that's a longer conversation than we have time today. But having those connections are super valuable. So you think about all the people in this world, unfortunately we see these disasters lately where people are causing harm to others or to themselves. And a lot of times it's part of the problem is they don't have this. Part of the connection or the lack of connection for people has a detrimental effect on their mental and physical well-being, which we're going to start talking about in a few minutes. Physiologically, I change or I stay in a certain state when I don't have a place where I feel comfortable, a place where I feel satisfied, a place where I feel connected. It physiologically makes me a little alert and get into a different part of my nervous system that is going to impact me long term. Okay, and so we see that often with people who aren't connected to groups, okay, and are isolated or don't even have a home. It has an impact on you. When I was 18, graduating high school, my mom moved to Texas and we sold the house. And so I lost the place I lived in for 18 years. And so I went through about 6 to 8 months of pretty good depression because I didn't have a place to live. I had places I could stay, but I didn't have a home. I didn't have a place I was connected to. The place I was connected to was gone. And so we see that a lot. And you think about all the people right now who are homeless, people who are struggling to find their way, struggling to find people, right? We've all known or see people who are struggling to have the self connection to other people, that sense of attachment, that sense of place. They don't have a place identity and they don't have a place dependence. So then where do they get that self-worth? Where do they get that positive satisfaction with their physical environment, with the people around them? Where do they get those satisfying social relationships? So a huge part of what can help them mentally and physically improve their health is gone. Okay, and that can have a huge bearing on life. Now, the other part of this that's not necessarily positive, which is why there's an asterisk next to it at the bottom, is place attachment can also cause you to continue to live and do things that are detrimental to your life because you are attached to that place. It's hard to move on. Abusive relationships, okay, whether that's physical, mental, or sexually abusive relationships, people will stay in those environments because of place attachment. One of the reasons. There's a lot of other stuff to that, but one of the reasons they'll stay there is because they have place attachment. There's a part of them that is so attached to that house, that community, those people, that they aren't willing to sacrifice that for their own well-being. So there are negatives to this, how we identify ourselves. I may have a job that I've been at for 12, 13 years that I won't leave because I'm attached to that and it's part of my identity, even though maybe there's better opportunities or something else to do. I have place attachment, I have place dependence. Okay, and so it can actually put people in situations where we decide to do things that are detrimental to our well-being because we're unable to let go of that. Okay? And it's really hard for people to move on from that. And that can be a not always a negative thing. I'm going to use these three as an example up here. Okay, basketball players, they love LCC. They've been lucky enough to be here 3 years. They don't want to leave because they feel attached to, it ain't because of me, but they feel attached to this place. It's their identity. They've been here 3 years as basketball players and students, and LCC is not just a school to them, it's a home. It's a place that they're attached to. And we've all had different situations like that. and it's hard to leave those, even though the next step or the best thing is to leave them. Okay, and so that can have detrimental effects on us. It can also add what we're going to talk about next, which is stress. Stress, it can add stress, right? If we have a place we're attached to and we have a home or a work or community and we're there all the time, that's going to decrease stress compared to someone who doesn't. But if I have to leave that place, even for a short amount of time, my stress level is going to go up. Okay. Now this is where I'm going to switch from kind of the psychology of it to the physiology. Let's talk about stress, okay, in our bodies. Our bodies have not evolved to understand the difference between modern 21st century stress and stress of being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. Okay. Our bodies don't know the difference. Okay. And so that creates some issues for us in this day and age where stress a lot of times is mental and mental fatigue, but our bodies still respond physiologically a lot of the same way they would as if a grizzly bear was chasing you down the street. Okay. If I had a test tomorrow, or if I had a bill due that I wasn't sure I was going to be able to pay, I'm going to have the same stress response as I would as if I'm being chased down the street by a bear. Completely different things, but my body doesn't know how to tell the difference. Our bodies have not evolved to be able to distinguish. So now let's think about in the idea of having a place that we call home or we're attached to, and maybe it's ripped away, or we have to even just leave it for a short amount of time. My stress level is going to go up. My body is going to react as if I am in a stressful situation. Okay, so now what happens in a stressful situation? Well, we have, and this is where I'm going to do some writing on the whiteboard for you. Go in teacher mode today, because that's where I feel comfortable. Teacher mode. All right. So I'm going to use this one. I'll slide it up on this side so everybody can see it. Okay. When we talk about stress, okay, we have two parts of our nervous system that deal with maintaining our health and well-being without us doing anything. Okay. All right. Two of these main categories, and they're called sympathetic, and I apologize for my handwriting. Is that red? Can't see? Yeah, I thought that might happen. That's why I grabbed blue. Can you see that? I'm going to throw it up higher too. Okay. Yeah, just shout at me. It won't hurt my feelings. So sympathetic and parasympathetic. Okay. Those are your two classifications of your autonomic nervous system, we call it, that deal with maintaining your everyday functions. Okay. Now they work like a teeter-totter. Okay. They work like a teeter-totter in your body. They're always balancing. Okay. Because there's always little changes in the environment that stress your body out. We always think of stress as like a really bad thing. Okay. Like, oh, I got to pay bills, or I got to go get the car fixed, or I got to go do this, or I got a test coming up since we got some students in here. I got a test coming up. That's stressful. Got to grade a bunch of stuff, right? We think of that as stress. But the reality is if I walk outside and it's hot, that's stress to my body. Higher temperature, stress to my body. Colder temperature, that's stress to my body. Okay. All sorts of different things can be a little bit of change from the norm is a stressor. So we have these two systems that work together. Okay. Parasympathetic is what we call the rest and digest system. Rest and digest. Okay. It helps us stay baseline, keep us norm. All right. So when you're eating your meal and you are digesting your food, parasympathetic is kicking in. Okay. When you're tired after your meal, parasympathetic is part of the reason you're tired after the meal, because of what it does to help you digest your food. Okay. Your heart rate, keeping your heart rate at whatever your resting heart rate is, the parasympathetic nervous system does that. Okay, so it's keeping everything cool and calm. Sympathetic, on the other hand, that's your stress response. Okay, they call it the fight or flight. Anybody ever heard that before? Fight or flight. Okay, now they've added another one to that, the 3 Fs: fight, flight, or freeze, because not everybody responds to stress the same way. They used to think, well, people either fight in stress responses or they run from them. Well, there's a lot of people that just don't do anything. They actually will they can't function in severe stress. And so they say freeze now: fight, flight, or freeze. Okay. And a lot of that is because of our sympathetic nervous system. Okay. And it doesn't know the difference between being chased by a grizzly bear and having a math test. Okay. That it doesn't know the difference. Our brain can try to distinguish, but blood vessels, hearts, muscles, they don't always know the difference. Okay. So when we talk about stress, our sympathetic nervous system is what's going to always kick up for stress. So what does that mean in our bodies? Okay. When you get stressed, what happens? I'm going to ask questions. What happens to your heart rate when you get stressed?
It's elevated.
Yeah. Speeds up. It gets higher. So I get a higher heart rate. Okay. Blood flow to my muscles is going to increase. So where does blood flow go away from? It goes away from my brain. So when my stress level goes up, I can't think very well. Okay. All right. Because my body thinks, well, we don't need to think very much. We need to focus on where we're going, what we're doing, how we're getting out of here. Okay. And if the grizzly bear is chasing me, I don't need to think. I need to use my legs. Okay. Which is why it's a separate topic, why test anxiety and memory recall is a real thing. Because if you are severely stressed, you are not going to be able to recall information very well, because your body physiologically is not worried about recalling information. Your body's worried about using muscles and dealing with whatever the stress might be. Okay. So there's physiological responses that, like I've said, have not evolved to 21st century stresses. Okay. The stressors of our time are not the stressors of going out and trying to find food and shelter and all the things that we used to have to do before modern technology. Now, people still have to do that, which we're going to talk about with sense of place and attachment. So the other part is, if I'm stressed, my sympathetic nervous system is going to retain water. I'm going to hold on to water, which is why if you've ever been in a stressful situation, or just maybe before any sort of event, if you had to do public speaking, maybe you've had to play a sport, okay, you might feel like you have to pee or urinate, but when you go, not much comes out. Okay. And that's this fight. It's a fight between the sympathetic and parasympathetic. Your sympathetic's kicking on and retaining all the water, but you still have this urge to have to urinate because of the balance between the two. Okay. But your body's going to hold on to water. All right. Which is, we're going to talk here in a little bit. All right. It's also going to affect your sleep cycles. Okay. Because your body's going to be a little more alert all the time, a little more tense, depending on the stress that you're dealing with. So now imagine someone who is living a life without any sort of place attachment. They feel disconnected from people. They feel disconnected from community. They maybe don't have a home, or maybe they're moving from home to home. Maybe they're in the foster care system. All right. Maybe they're just living out of their car. They are now living every day with an elevated sympathetic tone, elevated sympathetic nervous system daily. Now, doesn't mean their heart rate's going to be 120 every day, but it means their body is responding to stress in a different way than someone who has this every day. So now that person isn't getting the kind of physiological baseline function that they need to be able to kind of live a more relaxed baseline physiologically life they need to. Okay, they're in a heightened state of stress all the time. So that's going to impact decision making. Okay, which is why we often see people in those situations making decisions that we might think are not good decisions. But the reality is they're in a survive mode. They're being chased by a grizzly bear. Their grizzly bear just isn't a bear, right? It's a lack of place to live. It's a lack of connection to people. So they're trying to make decisions daily on how to survive. But our bodies also operating sympathetically. So we don't necessarily have the best blood flow to our brain. We probably in those situations also aren't getting the best nutrition, diet. So now all of a sudden their body is not in a state where they can make the best decisions. Okay, so you can see how that can become a bad cycle for people. Okay, so physiologically, we're putting ourselves in a situation where it makes it harder on us to get out of that. Okay, so a little lighter topic. I go on vacation. Okay, all right. Vacations always sound more relaxing than they are, first off, right? And I have 3 children, so when I vacation, they have fun. I'm a little stressed. I'm not a great vacationer as a dad with kids. I'm usually stressed. Got to get through the airport, got to make sure all that stuff goes well, pack. Everyone who's dealt with kids understands that. So now my stress level's up. Now I don't sleep very well because it's not my bed. I have no attachment to that bed. I have no comfort in that bed. I have no attachment to that hotel room or wherever we're camping. Like, I don't have any of these things, these comforts. Okay, so now I'm a little on edge. Now I need to try to stay on my same bathroom cycle. And that doesn't work very well for a lot of people. Okay, and sometimes it's because we think, well, it's not the toilet, it's not the bathroom, it's different, there's people. Yeah, and all those things play into it. But physiologically, all those things are stressors to us. And if we think back to what I said a minute ago, when I'm stressed out, my body wants to hold on to water. A big part of pooping, just to use the common language, is using water to make our feces softer. So when I don't, and I hold on to water because I'm stressed and my body thinks it needs to retain water because it needs to retain blood volume and blood pressure and feed my muscles, all of a sudden now I'm going to be dealing with travel constipation, they call it, right? And that's a real thing, okay? They've done some research, okay, to know that it's a real thing, and we've all probably felt it in some way, shape, or form at some point, all right? But our stress decreases the ability of us to create our fecal matter that we normally would at home. Okay, so our poop cycle changes. The nature of our feces changes. And then that impacts our digestive tract. And part of that is if I'm stressed a little bit, just a little bit on vacation, which show of hands, who gets a little stressed on vacation? Yep. You go on vacation for a while, and maybe the young ones here don't get this yet, but I go on vacation for 2 weeks or a week. And when I drive back in my driveway, there's nothing there. It's almost a better feeling is getting back home and walking into that house and like sitting on the couch for 5 minutes. You're like, oh, I'm home. Part of that is you're not elevated sympathetically anymore. When you're on vacation and you're stressed, the sympathetic is overcoming your parasympathetic. So your rest and digest system isn't working as well. It's being inhibited. Okay. It's being shut down a little bit, which impacts your ability to digest food. Okay, a lot of times people go on vacation, their diet changes a little bit, but a lot of times they get bloated. They get discomfort. Part of it is your sympathetic nervous system is taking more blood flow. Okay, it's diverting it. It's not letting your digestive system work the way it should. And then that impacts your poop cycle on vacation, which is what we all wanted to talk about today, right? Right. So they've done actual studies, though, on the psychology and the physiology of people traveling, because travel constipation is a real thing for, they vary, but there's anywhere from 25 to 40% of people who travel will deal with travel constipation at some point. And if anybody's had kids, it's worse in young kids, because going away from, they're learning how to be potty trained, and they're finally potty trained and they're comfortable at their house. And then you take them on a trip and they're like, I am not going to the bathroom on that toilet. I am not comfortable here. They will hold their poop for a week. Kids will. And I've seen kids hold it for longer and have to then go into the hospital because their body is so stressed about this new environment and this new situation and that's just on vacation with their family. So now think about kids who are raised in foster care, adoptions, don't have a stable household, are being moved from house to house for a million reasons. It's no one's fault one way or the other. Think about the stress that child is under, not just for pooping, but daily, right? And then think about how we grow and develop as people if we are living in situations where the sympathetic nervous system is always heightened. It's not beneficial. All right. I always joke around that those three right there, and I have gray hairs because they put me in that sympathetic nervous system all the time. But that's just so I can hide the fact that I'm probably going to be gray in a few years. All right. But our stress level is a huge indicator for our health. Our sense of attachment to a place, to a home, to people is a huge indicator for our health. Okay. The vacation pooping issue is just a small snapshot of what's happening to our bodies when we are in stress. And if you don't have the ability to have a sense of attachment to a place, okay, and I don't just mean a house, I mean to people, to an organization, to your work, all those different things, it can cause you to be living in a state in your life where sympathetically you're higher at all times. Now, flip side of that is if I'm an employer or a parent or a coach, I'm going to use this to my advantage. If I was an employer, I would be trying to find ways to keep people attached to this place, to feel a part of things, because it's going to improve their health. It's going to improve their efficiencies. It's going to improve their physiology, right? So there's ways we can use this to improve our communities, improve our organizations, improve our teams, improve our household, if we understand what stress is doing to our bodies and how do we combat that. Any questions? There's a lot. You guys got a snapshot of anatomy physiology class in 20 minutes. Question, yeah.
Yeah, I can understand.
Courtney's going to bring the mic to you.
Hello, my name's Sean. I can understand about the pooping issue. So being in the military, we'd always blame MREs for that. But we're constantly on the move, going to new locations. Who knows what the heck's going to happen the next day or how we did. And I could see how that could play subconsciously for us being in the field. And then also, you brought up and that does have a big effect on the homeless, especially the working homeless who've never used drugs and that, and eventually do because of how stressful the environment gets. So they're able to, also regarding physical abuse and sexual, able to operate, those people were able to operate the parameters of abuse, but goes somewhere else and the security nets found may never be found again. So they're able to have that environment. They know how to operate within it to where they could be at a safe place. But when they go somewhere new, that's all stripped from them. So I can see how that is.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing. Yep. It's having that stress definitely has a huge impact. And like you said, with the drugs as trying ways to self-medicate, that's definitely huge.
Hi, my name is Mike. A few years ago, I met this one guy and I kind of befriended him for a little while. We struck up a little bit of a bondship though. This guy was what I would call extremely eccentric in my opinion. The way he went about his life and everything, because he didn't want to ever settle in one place or do anything. He really didn't want attachments to anybody. He kind of acted that way. He lived in a camper. He'd get side jobs, work here, and he was constantly on the move and traveling around. And he would always display an attitude that was perfectly fine for him. He didn't want any kind of attachments to anything. How is it possible for somebody to maintain that the way, you know?
Yeah, well, I would say I'm not an expert to speak to that in its entirety. But in terms of what we're talking about, I'm sure that if he had a trailer or whatever, I mean, there's a sense of attachment to that home. But there's definitely, if you do some research around in the psychology of that, there's definitely traits that people develop in those situations and can be a long-term impact. But everyone's a little different. I'm not an expert, so I'm not going to jump into all that. But no, I think it definitely can have a detrimental impact long-term. But sometimes there are mental health things that people are dealing with that lead them into those lifestyles as well.
Let's turn it around just a little bit and talk about when a new person comes into your community, into your place. They're usually sudden, they're unpredictable, and they're arbitrary. They're there. And it suddenly makes your community, which was your place attachment, very scary.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And in fact, we didn't talk about that, but that is a common reason why people, when I come into a new organization, a new place, new people, initially people aren't accepted a lot of times, and sometimes they're turned away because of the place attachment that everybody has to that.
Mhm.
And it is scary and stressful to have this new person in there. And a lot of times people are pushed away.
As-
And that's a stress response.
As a coach, how do you deal with a new player coming in that is going to upset the whole balance? Truly.
Yeah, no, I like this question. Yeah, this is right up my alley. It's hard. And here at a junior college, we're talking about 6 to 8 new people every year. It's a high turnover. I was lucky with these 3 to have them for 3 years. So when you have people who are leaders, you lean on them to help build that culture. And I think as a coach, you are going to model that. So you're always going to try to model being open and welcoming, and try to bring people in through the way you act. And so they say teams take on the personality of the coach. And so how your coach leads is going to determine how your players decide to lead. And so for us, we really make it purposeful to include everyone. And something we've done, and I took it from other people, is we do what do I call that at the end of, now I can't remember, but at the end of practice, a lot of times we'll get someone in the middle and we'll make everyone go around the circle and share something about that person that has nothing to do with basketball. And that's one of the biggest things I try to talk about, and the way I treat my players is they're basketball players, but first and foremost, they're humans and they're people. And if you treat people that way, you can get past some of those barriers that push people out, right? If we're in an organization or a group of people, well, they're not part of our group. Well, the reality is they're still a person. So if we can treat people as humans, and understand that we all have different needs and values and concerns and cares and just want to be a part, that's a way you can overcome that. But I've also been lucky to have great individuals like them that have helped create that culture. But you definitely deal with it. And unfortunately, sometimes you also have to cut out someone who is trying to tear down your culture. You give them opportunities. And so there's times as a coach, you have to ask people to leave.
So you're getting ready to probably lose 3 parts that are your core.
Yeah, I'm getting ready to lose 6 of them who've been here. 5 of them been here 3 years. 1 of them's been here 2 years. And yeah, I won't talk about that too much because you'll see teary-eyed coach up here. So
Okay.
yeah, it's gonna be tough.
It's very interesting. You've allowed me to realize I have said out loud, I no longer feel safe in my own home. And this is the first time that I don't feel safe in my own place. And that is a real thing. Not only are the homeless being disrupted, but when your home is no longer safe, it's a scary place to be.
It is, for sure. For sure.
Jumping in a little bit on that from the teaching perspective as well, you talk about building a community and teaching in a college environment. I get a new batch of students every 11 weeks, and how much of that time is built, creating this space where we can all share together and we can learn together. And then at the end of the 11 weeks, boom, it's gone. And sometimes that's good because this is driving me crazy, or this was a really good group and I hate to see them go. And so building those smaller communities and making, the classroom your place where you feel attached and everything is, I haven't really looked at it through that lens of like a home, but that's sort of hit a core for me when you're talking here. So that's really interesting. No question, just like, hey, you made me think about stuff.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think a bigger aspect of that too is that I find amazing is that, you could run into Courtney in a grocery store and you might not talk to her. She might not be as social, but you get her in her space, her place, her classroom. All of a sudden now it's a different person. And I'm just using her as an example. A lot of times we become something different sometimes in certain places when we have this attachment to my classroom. I'm a professor, I'm this. And now all of a sudden I'm more extroverted, but naturally I'm more introverted. And so that can happen a lot of times. Like I'm a naturally more introverted person, but if you put me in a classroom or you put me in a gym, I'm far from introverted, because I have this sense of place and confidence and attachment to that place where I feel welcome and I feel like I have the confidence to be an extrovert. But if you put me in a new place with 25 new people, I'm going to struggle to go out and start mingling as well as I probably should. So yeah, no, I think that's a valuable point for me.
Yeah, that's exactly like you see me at the grocery store. I'm head down. Get me in a classroom. I can't shut up. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. One more question.
I don't know if you want to hear this one. I was in the military too, a long time ago, and I don't know why, but I didn't think we would be talking about bowel movements in this class. But anyway, you triggered something in me, and I got to tell you this story, that stress can be the food you eat too, So anyway, years and years ago, I was out in the field with a bunch of guys, and what we had to eat was called sea rations, which is canned food, like meat. And then you get, this was like World War II stuff. So, so we had like pound cake and we had fruit. Okay. So my friend comes up to me and he says, Neil, he says, I am totally stressed out. I go, what's your problem? He says, I haven't had a bowel movement in 10 days since we got here. I don't care, He says, what do I do? I said, oh, okay, you're my friend. So what have you been eating? He says, I eat the same stuff you eat, Okay. And I said, you've been eating the meat, the spaghetti, and you've been eating the pound cake, and you've been eating the fruit. He says, no, I don't like fruit. Oh my gosh. Now the pound cake is like cement. And I said, you got to be kidding me. You don't eat the fruit? No. He says, don't tell anybody. Okay, so I told everybody, and I said, start eating the fruit. That'll make you feel a lot better. Just fruit. I'll give you my fruit, just eat fruit. Okay. Well, our latrine or where we went to the bathroom was up this hill and had a canvas around it, and they put lye in it. And then one day, here he goes. And I don't know how he got this newspaper, but he had a newspaper under his arm. And he's going up to do his business. And everybody's like elbowing, hey, look. His name was Ski. Look at Ski. Look, Ski's going. I said, oh, man, this is cool. Ski's going. Why are we so happy? I don't know. So he's up there. I'm not going to tell you how long. He's coming down with a smile on his face. And there's about 40 of us. And we all give him like a standing ovation. We're clapping for him. Maybe it's the first time any veteran ever got a standing ovation for going to the bathroom. I don't know, but that what popped in my head. Sorry about that.
No,
I was wondering if I was going to have to cut the mic on this one.
nutrition and diet plays a major role, and even sometimes we can be doing a lot of the right things nutrition and diet wise, and stress will still keep us from being able to have a bowel movement we need to. But hey, nothing like a good story to end it.
Well, thank you all for joining us, and thank you to Lucas for sharing your knowledge. And please come back again next week. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.